Hi, hope you're well. Just had a bit of an interesting chat with one of the other service users, and thought I'd just share my thoughts on the paradoxical nature of psychiatric medicine. So we're talking about ward rounds and getting out of hospital and stuff, and I sort of said, you can reach this stage in with mental illness and mental health recovery where you sort of saying in your ward rounds, like, I feel better now, like I don't feel like I did before, and like I think I've made a recovery, and I think I've gained insight into my condition, and I don't need to take this medicine anymore, and I don't need these treatments. And then they say to you, no, it's because of the meds that you feel better, because you're mentally ill, and that's why you have to stay here and keep being treated and keep taking the medicine, and there's kind of no way around it. And if you do the opposite and you say, like, these meds aren't working for me, I'm not mentally ill, like I don't need these meds anymore because I don't think they're working for me, they'll either say, well, in that case we need to put you on different ones, or they'll say, I don't know what the fuck happened there. They'll say, they want to put you on different meds, or they'll say that you lack insight. Like, insight into your illness is like understanding and agreeing with them that you do have a mental disorder, which even if you don't, you have to agree with them, because the AMS, that's approved mental health professional, have written that you do, and they get approval from the Minister of Justice under Section 12 of the Act to detain British citizens till such time as they feel that they've made a full recovery and they're not considered by the state to be a danger to themselves or others. But you either kind of sort of say, yeah, I'm feeling better now, do you know what I mean? Like I feel better now, and I don't need this medicine anymore, and I don't need this treatment. I'm happy to go back into the community. And they just sort of do that. I did some maths. Like, I was doing this document when I was in Signet, Colchester. It was all about trying to record ward rounds, which is like a complex issue they've not allowed me to do if you've followed any of my other videos. But there's something like 2,600 Signet beds in the UK. And if you look on Companies House, they've made about 35 million quid approximately. So by 365 days, works out somewhere in the region of about 500 quid a night, they get for keeping people in there. And it's sort of like a business where they get to choose how many customers they have and how much money they make. And I said, like, if this was like a boarding school, I would expect at least like 8 hours a day or like 5 hours a day of structured activities, like one-to-one counselling, cognitive behavioural therapy, one-to-one psychology sessions, occupational therapy. Like, when they've actually come on leaps and bounds in this hospital since I kind of raised this with them. They've put together a really good therapeutic timetable, much better occupational therapy activities, and more kind of psychology. I've been working one-to-one with the psychologist, and I found it really quite beneficial in some ways. But yeah, I remember being in Signet, Colchester in 2023, and there was we did this one group, don't know if you remember in primary school, you used to have these sort of dog shit instruments that was like a wooden thing that goes up and like a triangle, like a glockenspiel and shit. And they had this activity, and it was like music appreciation. And they had like a shitty Bluetooth speaker and all these kind of instruments, like a guitar with 3 strings on it that it's just unplayable. And there was all these 4 or 5 of us depressed blokes sat around in this conservatory in this ward, which was called Highwoods, which is different. This ward's called Haywood. Sounds similar. It was called music appreciation, and there was this head occupational therapist, and then like the people just put on a few like crappy tunes on YouTube, a bit like kind of like the afters from a shit night out at a club when you just go back and everyone puts stuff on YouTube, but worse than that because people in psychiatric hospitals like don't all have the same taste in music. A lot of it's really banal, kind of lame pop music and stuff, and like playing with these stupid musical instruments. And there was this head occupational therapist, and all she did was just like sit there, like kind of like sort of like just nodding along with this music appreciation. And she probably got paid like 70 grand a year for doing that, you know, and it was just like, what is this? Like, what kind of profiteering, subcontracted nightmare is this kind of leeching off of our public sector, you know, with the kind of insulation of it being a private sector organisation with their own policies and procedures, you know, who are kind of like a law unto themselves, a bit like kind of diplomatic immunity or something, but within the kind of context of mental health. But yeah, like I've had psychology sessions before where it's literally been like, you get a bit of paper and it'll have like sad emoji, neutral emoji, happy emoji, tick next to the box that best describes your emotions. Like if you feel stressed, try breathing exercises, like breathe in for 4 and out for 2. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, that's like managing your emotions, and that's your group psychology session. You can keep this sheet with emojis on it, and you know, you can sit in a room and play the triangle or the glockenspiel, or make some like no-bake cornflake Rice Krispie cakes with like 3 other 35-year-old men who are like going through the worst time in their life that aren't interested at all. And if you try and go to the doctor and say like, you know, like I don't need to be here anymore, I'm not getting any benefit out of being in this hospital, I'm not getting any kind of help, then they just say like that, you know, yeah, like they just say, well no, it's like it's because you're ill that you're feeling better because we've given you meds and treatment, like, and that's why you have to stay here, you know. Anyway, you know, recycling my own kind of narrative. Shouldn't use the word narrative so much, but you know, yeah, it's difficult being in hospital, and yeah, like it can be really difficult sometimes, but hopefully I'll get out soon, and if you're in one, I hope you do too, and everyone can live in peace and harmony, reciprocity for the future. And if you have got problems with your mental health, I would say just like, I wouldn't say don't go to the NHS, but like first port of call, just try and find someone that you know and you love and you respect and tell them how you feel, because you know, friends are family and family are friends, and like I've got no sort of close family except for my brother. My parents passed away. I was saying in my psychology session, they passed away in like 2013 and 2014 when I was in my sort of mid-20s, late 20s, which I haven't worked since then, and I've been sectioned every year since 2018. I've spent like 9 different sections at different Signet hospitals, and it's been like, there's been, you know, things that I've been happy about. I've never really been happy in hospital, but like I have formed good relationships with some of the staff, you know, and I have got, even though I might have Stockholm syndrome, which isn't like recognised as a mental illness, but I do have it. It's like, it's easier to feel that you have like an affinity or a forgiveness, or that somebody else has got a lack of autonomy in their actions if you feel like persecuted, or feelings of repression or depression or derision or kind of like denigration or whatever. Like, you know, you can have this sort of like, it's easier as a place to be. It's easier to sort of be like, oh, maybe they're being forced into it, maybe they haven't got any choice, you know, maybe they're just sort of like following, you know, blindly, you know, someone else's bastard song sheet, because that's easier than like the prescient frontal acceptance that like, yeah, you're just like, you know, you're in a powerless, helpless situation, locked in a room in a building where you can't leave until they tell you, and that might be months or years, you know. And it's like with the psychiatrist, it's sort of like you can't win. But my psychiatrist has been, you know, they're talking about transferring me to a rehab soon, and a mental health rehab, not a drug rehab, obviously. And I don't know what that's going to look like. For some reason, it's been funded by Devon Partnership Trust rather than Avon and Wiltshire Partnership, because the Swindon versus Worcester case, according to NHS guidance, which is like, again, paradoxically, all the information that I've shown them on my right to record war drums, they've said it's just guidance, so it doesn't matter. But when I've showed them this Who Pays website, which I've made videos about, and said, oh look, I don't think NHS Devon Partnership Trust should be funding my treatment. Like I've had like, I'd say negative experiences with them before. I don't think they're like, I wouldn't rate them as a particularly sound, you know. It's a bit like in Starbucks, you can't really get like, or whatever it is, Costa, you don't get like a small cappuccino. You can only have like medium or large, and it's like the CQC don't really like shit in anyone's cornflakes and be like poor, rubbish business. But if it says requires improvement, a lot of the time in my lived experience, that means like it's a god-awful shithole that's being run by people with, you know, vacuous integrity and like zero patient-centered, kind of focused, anything at all. Like, you know, like I've had some really bad experiences. Like I got my ribs broken by a team of people who injected me in like 2020, and like it really hurt like fuck for like weeks, and like they wouldn't send me for an x-ray. I went for an x-ray and I broke my hand. You might have seen that on my Instagram channel or like YouTube. 2023, I lost a temper. I was a nurse named Lily, and I was asking for my papers, and she like stuck her fingers up at me, like section 1, section 2, you can't have your papers. And they were saying that they had to be like redacted. I won't say where she worked, but yeah, it's just it's just I just lost my temper and like punched like a bulletproof glass window and just smashed my hand. Went to guys in St Thomas Hospital, and they didn't like give me like an adult discharge summary letter. They just sort of wrote it down on the back of a fag packet. Like they asked me to give my name and my address. They didn't give me a referral letter for x-ray, and they basically just completely obfuscated the whole thing so that there was no paper trail. The staff that escorted me tried to stop me recording the consultation, and they misrepresented my details on the form that they insisted on signing at A&E reception in Guys and St Thomas Hospital. And it was like the NHS were just sort of like, they helped me with my broken hand. It was my own fucking fault. I shouldn't have punched like a reinforced glass window. But yeah, it's not easy in mental hospital, but I've been talking for 13 minutes now, so I'm gonna wrap it up. But I hope everyone has a good day, and don't lose your temper. And if you've got mental health problems, speak to somebody that you know you love first. Tell them how you feel, because when I relapsed, it was like I told my brother that I loved him, and he loves me unconditionally, Connor McLeod, and he's like, you know, the son I've never had and the father I always wanted, you know. In a way, we've had a bit of a role reversal with me as big brother and him as kind of somebody who's secure. But it's like, you know, if I didn't have him, I'd be fucked. And it's not that I'm not fucked now, but like I don't really have very many close friends and family. And I think if I did, if I could have just gone to them and told them how I feel, then I probably wouldn't have relapsed in July and ended up back in hospital again. So if you've got things like depression, anxiety, stress are all kind of parts of life, do you know what I mean? They're like natural symptomatic things. I kind of agree with this recent narrative in the media, again, narrative of like people saying that you know, mental health being overdiagnosed. I think that, you know, for a lot of people just being signed off work and given loads of tablets and sat at home watching, you know, daytime TV, Homes Under the Hammer, and a place in the sun on your own, off your face on antipsychotic meds, dribbling while you smoke straights and drink instant coffee, isn't really like conducive to good mental health. Like even if you're making cardboard boxes in a factory, or like, you know, working as a hospital porter, or, you know, working in a bar or a pub, or like, I don't know, you know, I think, you know, stress and anxiety and depression are sort of parts of life, and I think there is a bit of a wet blanket culture where it's like sort of overdiagnosed. But if you don't feel good, you know, as a mental health patient, as somebody who has struggled this last year, and, you know, with severe mental health problems, not just kind of like paranoia and feelings of persecution and oppression, but really to self-destructive times in my life where I've come very close to the sort of precipice of non-existence. And if you do feel like that, you know, I'm not saying don't go to your GP, I'm not saying mental hospitals are shit, but like first port of call, yeah, friends are family and your family are your friends. And like, if you're in a position like me where they aren't, then, you know, you've got to seek help from professional organisations, but just don't sort of like don't negate or forget that, you know, for the last God knows how many millions of years that we've existed as a human species, before we had psychiatry and mental hospitals and antipsychotic medications and antidepressants, we've just had each other. And for better or worse, we're always going to have each other. And if, like me, you know, you haven't got the people that you love, you know, at the end of the phone or anywhere that you can go and see and speak to, then just never give up, and share your feelings, whether it's with your GP or your best mate in the pub, or somebody sat in the park with some bread and cheese and a good book and a joint. Just reach out for help, and don't be afraid to tell people how you feel, because there's no shame in it. Cheers.